Delighted to introduce Jen Hirsch, who has been a member of our congregation for many years. Was lucky to be president, been known to mitzvah of both her daughters, Lucy and Anna. Those are their names, right? I got it right? Okay, good. And went to Israel with Anna about 5 years ago. Is Lucy going to go to Israel with me? Yes, okay. Please God, this December, okay. Jen also serves on the board as the chair of the Tikkun Olam for Social Action. Which one was it? Community Engagement Committee. It was on the executive committee. Her husband once gave a very impressive presentation for the Laka Hamantashen debate. Or was it you interrupting him or him interrupting you? I don't remember. Anyway, we're delighted. She also works for Jessa, so I'm sure there's going to be something about Jacada. I got the J right. Jacada, which is a wonderful organization which supports those dealing with domestic abuse. And we're excited to welcome Jen to give the Devar Torah this morning.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm grateful for the opportunity to reflect on this week's Parsha and to share those reflections with you. So thank you for being here. While this week's Parsha is considered a double portion, Matot Maseh, I was immediately struck by the first paragraph. Although we didn't read the first paragraph out loud today, that's the part I'm going to be speaking about. Moses spoke to the heads of the tribes of the sons of Israel, saying, "This is the word that God has commanded. If a man makes a vow to God or swears an oath, he must not permit his word to remain unfulfilled. He shall do whatever has come forth from his mouth." The Parsha then goes on to talk about the rare circumstances where it might be okay to break one's vow. We read about the ways a woman may break her vow if her father or her husband intervene. Personally, I found the examples of how a father or a husband may annul a woman's vow rather unsatisfying. Guidance about how anyone, regardless of gender, might break a vow ethically might have sat better with me. But overall, what struck me was the reminder of the importance of keeping one's word and how that might apply today. I remember when I first learned this lesson as a child. I'd promised my father that I would clean my room before school started, and as the deadline came closer and closer, I was not making any progress, and my dad reminded me of my promise. I remember saying something brilliant like, "Yeah, well, if I don't get to it before school starts, it'll be after. What's the difference?" Thinking in my child's mind, what's the big deal? And I'll never forget my father's reply. "Jenny?" Yes, they all call me Jenny up north. "Jenny," my dad said, "when you say you're going to do something, you do it." That's it. Nothing fancy. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. Or, how Hashem puts it, if a man makes a vow to God or swears an oath, he must not permit his word to remain unfulfilled. He shall do whatever has come forth from his mouth. While reading this week's Parsha and preparing for this Devar, I had the opportunity to reflect on this lesson and what it means in today's world. Throughout your lives, we encounter many opportunities for vows, starting from infancy with a bris or brit milah when we are welcomed into the covenant between God and Abraham, and promises are made by parents and the community to help raise that and support that child. When we become a bar bat mitzvah, we are reaffirming our commitment to Judaism, and of course, under the chuppah, should we choose to marry, we make promises to our spouse and the community about the home we will build together. But what about those everyday promises? What about the person we run into and say, "We should really do lunch," and then never call? What about the promises we make to ourselves to drink more water or move our bodies more? Are those promises sacred? And who is holding us accountable? And how does this apply to our elected officials? How many campaign promises have we seen broken once in office or kept despite new evidence that may show the promise was flawed to begin with? Where is the room for changing one's mind once a vow has been made? While today it is terrible for a politician to be viewed as a flip-flopper, don't we want leaders who can change their minds in the face of new information? But how do we balance that with keeping our word? In the speed of today's modern world, it can feel like promises or commitments are changing constantly at record pace. You agree to meet your friend at noon, only to receive a text at 11:56 asking to meet at 12:30. Reading the news, it can feel like promises are made and broken within hours, and that rules and consequences promised don't always apply equally across the board. Hypocrisy abounds. But how do we as individuals ensure in our daily lives that our word is reliable? And how do we determine the things that we think are important enough to make a vow or a promise around? My all-time favorite organizational psychologist, because everyone needs a favorite organizational psychologist, Adam Grant, teaches us the difference between beliefs and values. He says beliefs are what you think is true, and values are what you think is important. Do we value keeping our word? If we base our vows or promises on what we think is important and remain curious about what we believe to be true, perhaps we can stay open to new information and remain in our integrity. How do we keep from becoming overwhelmed in a world where things are constantly changing? Maybe we start small by keeping those promises to ourselves and our loved ones and our communities, and put our faith in Hashem that each of us keeping our individual word in the small moments will have the desired ripple effect in creating a more peaceful world. After contemplating this week's Torah portion, as usual, I have more questions than answers. But one thing I know for sure is in that our fast-paced modern world, where our to-do lists are always growing and there's always more to do, more to learn, more to experience, sometimes going back to basics by keeping our simple promises to ourselves and our loved ones is a great way to connect or reconnect with what matters. Maybe this week, as we go about our daily lives, we take an extra moment to consider a promise we have made to ourselves or a loved one and think about how we might work towards fulfilling that promise. It is never too late to keep our word. Shabbat Shalom.